Welcome back. In this video, we'll talk about sketching. So now that I have my design laid out and ready to get started, I should pick something to start with. Well, probably let's start with the base because it's a simple rectangle. What we're going to do is create a new sketch on the ground plane, and that's going to start with a rectangle. Simple box around. And once again, making sure that I'm staying inside the bounds of the frame that we've created, but I'm also going a little bit inside. So I would suggest giving yourself a little bit of wiggle room here, just in case. Like, don't have things right up against each other unless you're really tight for space. Now, I want to have a nice bevel around these edges, so I can use the fillet tool and click this edge and this edge. Done. And then here I can choose the radius. I'll go 0.75. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the fillet tool here to here. 0.75. And then do the same thing here to here. Honestly, maybe 0.6 looks better. That looks like it really lines up with the drawing better. So maybe we'll stick with 0.6. But as you can tell, I wasn't perfect with my circles. But I can always double check and change this. If I double click, change that to a radius of 0.6. Oh, but then you have to watch out if you change these without having other things dimensioned. You might need to constrain things a bit better. So what we can do is we can take the dimension tool, go from here, or we want to do from this dot to this dot. We want this to be a set dimension. So we choose maybe 3 inches, and that'll control the width. And maybe let's go 2.75. Oh, a little bit less. 2.5 there. And that way, it's constrained to that height, and I can always change it. And then I could also do a constraint between these if I wanted to. I could say that this is equal to this, but in this case it's not too bad, or it's fine that way. And then maybe I want to also have a dimension here to control the width this way. So this is going to be, let's say, 4.5. And then if I want to move it, then I switch to my select tool, box select, and I grab a point. Now the entire thing moves into position. And actually, that looks pretty good. Now, I also want to have these cuts out. So I'm going to take my rectangle, I'm going to create a rough outline of where I want it to go, and then from there I'm also going to dimension this, because this thickness needs to be the thickness of the laser cut material. So in this case it's 1/8 inch. And then this, I need to make sure that these are the same as whatever my platform width is going to be. In this case, these are supposed to be 1.5. So that's what I'm going to do there. And I'm going to do another one. We'll make another rectangle here. I'll switch back to top view. And then that's going to be 1. And this is also going to be 1/8. Then I'm going to move this one a little bit because I don't like where it's positioned. I'm just going to move it maybe slightly more that way. Now it's not quite in line with my drawing, but that's okay. I wanted it to be a bit longer. You can make changes to your drawing. It's a reference. It's not a requirement. And then what I could do is I could have this be the same as that. So I could press Control C, and then click away, press Control V, and then I move it to where I want it to go. And then now I press OK to confirm the copy, and so that way I didn't have to draw the same thing again. Of course, I can move these wherever I want. I can reposition however I like the entire design. You should be able to select just this part though. How come I can't move that? There, okay. If I select this face and then I can grab the point there. There we go. Now, we want to move this guy again. And the other thing you could do is if you wanted everything constrained, you could actually say that the distance from here to here matters. You can actually measure and lock that distance in. In our case, it's not too big of a deal. I'm just going to box select and move things into the right spot. And there we go. Now, I'm not following exactly where I told it to go, but that's okay. I can always reposition. But you grab the dots. So I select the face and then I grab the vertex to actually make it move. Like that. There we go. Now that I have that, I would continue that process for my other designs. Some of these are a little bit more tricky. So you can stop the video now and try it out for yourself, trying out the different tools. But I'm going to go over some of the other shapes and how I made them. So feel free to stick around and watch more if you like. Or just skip to the next video if you've got it. Let's talk about this shape. So what I did for this one is I started by creating a circle with a set radius, let's say 2. And then down in this menu here, there's an ellipse tool. So I used the ellipse tool to create an ellipse, but actually it's a center ellipse for that one. So it's ellipse from here to this edge, done. And then the width is gonna be the width that I want to there, let's say. Now this ends up being slightly different than the original design. Like I said, it's okay as long as there's no things going over my lines. That's fine. Then what I did is I did the same thing again, created another ellipse from here, but this time didn't go quite as far, and then didn't go quite as high. And that gives me my ring. And it's okay if there's lines that overlap right now. And in the next video, you'll see how you can actually turn these overlapping lines into other shapes. Now, this base was a little bit more tricky. I need to make sure its width is 1 inch. So that's gonna be from here, I'm gonna select this and make this be, the thickness should be the thickness of your material, which is 1/8 in this case. And the length should be 1 inch for this one. Then I created another rectangle, but this time intersected that rectangle with the planet as well as with the base. So you can decide how wide you want it to be. I ended up going about there, but you can also be a bit more precise by taking your dimension tool and setting the distance from here to here to be, let's say, 3/8 there. And then we could do the distance from here to here is also 3/8. And so now it's exactly centered. And then the last thing that I did is I created a fillet from here to here. And I also created another fillet from here to, oh, it doesn't like that. You might need to delete that, draw a new line. There, I filled the shape again. Then let's try doing the fillet on this side from here to here, and then 3.25, done. So now I've fixed it. And there we have our planet, looking pretty cool. And you can repeat that same process. Now, one of the things that I did, the rocket, this rocket curve, I actually ended up using, so I'm gonna press finish sketch. what I did for this curve is I ended up using like a separate sketch. So I actually, what you can do is you could have everything in one sketch, or you can actually have it all in separate sketches. It's a bit more organized actually if they're in separate sketches. So I pressed finish sketch for these. Then I'm going to go into this one and create a new sketch. And if I want to create this curve, what I do is I go into the spline and I go along the curve. And this is where having that reference photo is really handy. Like that. And then press enter to confirm. And then you do the same thing for the other side. Enter to confirm. And you can also go in and adjust if you're like, oh shoot, I need to adjust my curve a little bit. You can always go in and make changes. And then I just took a rectangle and made it from this point to here. Now you have to be careful, like if you look at the bounds, that's the max, so I have to make sure that I'm not going beyond that. I dimension the rectangle, 0.25, or no, 1/8, and then that's actually too far, right? So this actually needs to be up here, and then this can be connected there. This shouldn't overlap, so let's do that instead. And now we have our shape, and I can continue this design to create the rocket body. In that case, I created the body using a different type of rectangle called a 3-point rectangle, which allowed me to create a point to a point to a point. Okay, and you'll notice that the original rectangle I made wasn't really exactly square, because otherwise it should line up. But it's good enough. And then I could center this using dimensions. What I also did is I created a reference line. So you create a line that's in the midpoint of this shape. That triangle means midpoint. That's a constraint that it means midpoint, which means it's locked into the center. That's what I did to create this correctly. Now I can go from here, and then it creates that line that allows me to know that it's on the midpoint, and then from here to there. And that allowed me to constrain it correctly. And that's basically all I did for the rocket ship. And then just some similar things to create the other details. And I created a curve for this as well. I didn't end up using these stars. You'll see in the final design, it's a little bit different. Anyway, I'm going to finish that sketch. And that's the basics. So let me know if you have any questions. And when you're ready, move on to the next video. Thanks for watching.